Good morning. Welcome to Artifact Adventures and Wake Up with Ashland. It's good to have you with us again this morning. We appreciate you being here on this beautiful sunny morning. We have what we think is a really important and interesting story to tell you today. One that is really relevant in current affairs. So we hope that you will enjoy and appreciate it, and perhaps it will inspire you to learn more and to dig deeper into the subject we're going to discuss today. So we appreciate you being here. I want to thank Dupuy Mutual Funds for their support of this series, which has been ongoing, and we've been very grateful to be able to bring you this series thanks to their assistance, and we're glad you've been joining us all along. We will be continuing the series. We are in the process right now of finalizing reopening. Information should now be on our website and on social media in the near future. So look for that. We'll be reopening on the 16th. And we'll talk a little bit today about one of the tours we're going to do when we do that. So we'll hope to see you all soon. And we'll be continuing to see you in this manner each week, at least on Thursdays. So we'll look forward to seeing you virtually as well. So again, today we're going to talk about what I think is a really fascinating story and a really amazing artifact. It's actually one of the newest artifacts in the collection. Just acquired it at the beginning of the year. And we were really pleased to be able to do that. It's an artifact we had hoped to acquire for some time, and finally everything lined up and we were able to do that. So I think it's actually one of the most important artifacts in the entire collection because of the powerful story it tells and because there are so few like it. It is so unique and so amazing that it exists at all. So without further ado, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to turn the camera around so that we can look at the artifact. Hopefully we can do this. There we go. So there is the artifact. It is a drawing in ink on paper. It was done in pencil and then done over it in ink. You can see it is of a man, African-American man. You can see that he is wearing a coat, a waistcoat, a shirt, and a cravat, and that he has a very sort of placid countenance. So who is this individual, and why is this so important? Well, if you come down here, you can see that this is Charles Dupuy, age 34 or 35. And there's a further inscription which reads, Charles Dupuy of Mendenhall memory, a slave belonging to the Honorable Henry Clay, drawn by John Neagle from the life, Lexington, Kentucky, November 20th, 1842. Emancipated by Mr. Clay, December 9th, 1844. So, who is Charles, and why is this so important? Charles Dupuy, as indicated by the inscription, was enslaved here at Ashland. He was actually born at Ashland about 1807. He is a member of the best documented family here at Ashland, the Dupuys. His father, Aaron, came from Hanover County, where Henry Clay came from. We think that Aaron was enslaved in Hanover County by members of Henry Clay's family, and that's how he became connected with Henry Clay. Aaron's wife, Charlotte, was born in Maryland. She came to Kentucky with a man by the name of James Condon, who sold her to Henry Clay when she married Aaron. She asked for that so that she would not be separated from her husband. So that's a pretty amazing fact that his mother asked to be sold and was sold to be with her husband. So those are his parents. They were married about 1806. So he was born not long after. And Aaron had been enslaved here for about 7 years at that point, and Lottie was purchased at that time. So anyway, those are his parents. We don't know much about Charles's childhood. We don't have a lot of records of childhood of the enslaved at Ashland, but it's reasonable to believe that by the time that Charles was 5 or 6 years old, he would have had duties of some kind. He would have been put to work in some ways. For example, perhaps fanning people dining in the dining room to keep flies off and keep them cool. There would have been jobs for people of that age, and he would have had more duties as he grew up. By the time that he reached adulthood, he would have begun to learn a lot of the duties that his father had. His father was Henry Clay's valet, helped Henry Clay dress and bathe. He was also the person that often answered the door. things of that nature. And Charles took over a lot of those duties. So by probably the late 1820s or early 1830s, if you came to Ashland to visit, he would have opened the front door right there. And so he was often the first person that people saw that came to visit the Clay family and the last person that they would have seen. He would have shut the door behind them. So that would have been one of his duties. He had other duties. We know, for example, that he was given the keys to the wine cellar. So he would have maintained the wine cellar, probably would have distributed wine when it was required. So that was one of the jobs that he was given. So he became a very important person here at Ashland and in the home. Would have been one of the more trusted enslaved people here in the home. Someone who would have managed other enslaved people probably. Next, we should ask, who is John Neagle and why did he do this and what is the meaning of the inscription? So John Neagle was an artist. He was from Philadelphia, and in 1842 he was commissioned by Whigs in Philadelphia, members of Henry Clay's political party, to come to Ashland and paint Henry Clay. That is one of two works for which he is predominantly known. The painting of Henry Clay as father of the American system, and a painting of a man named Pat Lyon, who was a blacksmith. He painted Pat Lyon at his forge, and that's a very famous painting as well. He did a number of other works, very well-known artist, relatively successful. Was here from October 1842 until January of 1843, painting Henry Clay as father of the American system. And you can see that painting on our website and elsewhere. There are two originals that he did. One is at a place called the Union League in Philadelphia. That's the one he was commissioned to do. He did a second one, which he ultimately sold to the United States government. It hangs over the entrance to the United States House of Representatives in the Capitol in Washington. So we have a letter that Neagle wrote, that he wrote to a friend named John Sartain. Sartain was an engraver. In fact, come over here, this engraving of Ashland was done by John Sartain. He engraved a lot of Neagle's work as well. And in this letter, Neagle says that he's come to Ashland. He talks about the farm and what's going on at the farm, and that he's been painting this painting of Henry Clay. And he goes on in his letter to say that Charles had been assigned to do things like light the fire in the room where he painted and open the windows. And he goes on to tell us that he painted in the drawing room. I'm going to come over here. The drawing room of Henry Clay's mansion would have been in approximately this location. The big difference is Neagle tells us that there were 3 windows in Henry Clay's drawing room instead of the 2 we have, and that he drew in this room because it was very well lit. So this is where where Neagle drew, and where this drawing probably was done. So very close to where it now hangs. He says he painted Charles from life, meaning that he painted Charles from seeing him in person. And he gives us the date of November 20th of 1842. So that's pretty spectacular. To have an image of an enslaved person at all is remarkable. To have an image dated and to the point that we know exactly where it was drawn is just unheard of. That just does not happen. You never see that. So anyway, it's a remarkable piece. And Neagle goes on to use the phrase of Mendenhall memory. This is a very important phrase because this is an important part of Charles's life. Julie Brock, a Henry Clay descendant, asks about the large painting upstairs. That is a reproduction of the American system. That was done after the originals were completed by a different artist. Maybe someday I'll do that story because that's a fascinating story in and of itself. For an artifact adventure. So anyway, yes, that's a reproduction of Neagle's American system. But Mendenhall memory refers to an incident that occurred when Henry Clay was invited to speak in Richmond, Indiana. He went there ostensibly to be honored. This was shortly before the election of 1844. He came, they had dinner, he spoke, and after he spoke, he was approached at this dinner in a public way by a man named Hiram Mendenhall, a Quaker, who presented him with a petition to free the people he enslaved. And that didn't sit well with Henry Clay. He felt it was inappropriate to invite someone to be honored and then to engage in this sort of action, to then present with this sort of petition. And he goes on to speak about why he would not free the people he enslaved. how well they were treated at Ashland. And one of the things he says is, if you want to know about slavery at Ashland, ask Charles. Charles was with him. Charles, by that time, had taken over a duty of his father, and that duty was traveling with him